It's an honor for me to be asked to speak to you this morning. I am deeply in awe of these young people and all young people who are involved in making a difference. Their energy and their commitment and the inventiveness and empowerment of the solutions that they've arrived at. They are really, truly the hope of the world and an inspiration and heroes to all the rest of us. It is Winston Churchill once remarked that it takes no time at all to prepare a speech of 2 hours, but there's never enough time to prepare a speech of 10 minutes. So since I have very little time, but it's not running yet, so I guess I can talk longer. I won't have all the time that I would like to tell you what's in my heart, so I'm going to tell you some of the things that are on my mind. I tend to speak in metaphor, so actually, though I'm speaking about my career, it is in effect a metaphor. It was my experience on the journey when I was their age. I started in the theater in Cleveland in 1963. I was in a play at the Cleveland Playhouse called Johnny Got His Gun, which is from a novel written by Dalton Trumbo, who, if you don't know, I suppose a lot of young people don't know who Dalton Trumbo was, or this novel. It was a very powerful and evocative anti-war piece that Dalton wrote just before the advent of the Second World War. And we were performing it, and during the rehearsal period, John Kennedy was killed. And our whole world turned upside down. I had no idea what to do with it. I went off to England to some event. I came back, and my father had cut a little squib out of the New York Times that a theater that was touring the South was auditioning actors and directors. So I went down and auditioned. I got this job, and I flew down to New Orleans, and I was met by the head of the theater, who took me to the place that we were staying in the quarter in New Orleans, and on the door it said "Coloreds Only." And I thought, oh, isn't that quaint? It must be a throwback to the Civil War. Just shows you how naive I was. And the very nice woman who owned the building showed me my room, and then we went out for dinner. We went to a restaurant. The founder of the theater, both founders of the theater, John O'Neill and Gilbert Moses, were black, and I was sitting with John, and the owner of the restaurant threw us out. And I had never been thrown out of a restaurant, so of course I got up with my fists balled up, and John said, no, I'll take care of it, and informed the man that he was violating our civil rights. And that was my sort of introduction into the Deep South. We toured Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, playing mostly to the black community, an integrated company doing a play by Samuel Beckett called Waiting for Godot, and a boulevard piece called Pearly Victorious by Ossie Davis. And it was extraordinary. We were under the auspices of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who was in the process, along with CORE and SCLC, of empowering people, black people in the South, to register to vote, to reclaim their civil rights, and to defend their human rights against the onslaught of the racism in the South. My introduction to Mississippi was, as we drove in, there was a church on the hill with the side blown out. It had been firebombed. I went to the Freedom House. There were more black men than I had ever been close to, listening to a 14-year-old girl describe how she had been beaten, kicked, and spat upon while integrating the lunch counter in Macomb. And that was my introduction to Mississippi. We played to some incredible audiences. Fannie Lou Hamer gave the best speech I ever heard about Waiting for Godot, and maybe you don't know who she is, but it was incredible, because these people had never seen a movie, they'd never gone to the theater, and yet they sat and watched one of the most complicated and abstract plays and were able to extract from that play some meaning for them. This was the most profoundly moving and fulfilling and important event in what has now become my career. So where I stand now is I work in Hollywood in an industry that is controlled by now 6 multinational corporations, soon to be 3, who produce, they produce films which are mostly repeats or rehashes or mindless drivel, whose purpose is to get people to buy very expensive tickets over and over again to create profit for their multinational corporation, and there is a subtext which is to disempower and misinform people as to their ability to be agents of change, to take control of their world, to see themselves, which is what the purpose of it is for us, art, is for us to be able to see ourselves, as Shakespeare said, Hamlet says, hold the mirror up to nature so that we can recognize ourselves and the actions that we take, and we can modify our behavior and those actions so that we can be more effective, more open, and more compassionate. This industry makes fewer and fewer films. It pays those people, luckily enough, to be called A-list people, incredible amounts of money. My union has 120,000 actors in it. 85% of those actors make less than $10,000 a year, which means they can't afford health insurance. This is the way capitalism and the business model is applied to art. So that when I go around and I talk to young people I just was in Savannah at Savannah College of Art and Design, and I spoke to the kids there, and they say to me, because they're all budding directors and actors, and they say, well, so how do we make it? When I go to Hollywood, how will I get an agent? And where will I? I said, no, don't go to Hollywood. Don't go to Hollywood. Stay in your community. Find a group of like-minded people, actors, a director, cinematographer, editors, the people that you need to create a unit. Go out into your community and find out what stories that community needs to hear, wants to tell about itself, and make that into a film. You will then have a film. It's impossible for anybody outside the Hollywood system to distribute a film. So what is happening is because of these machines, it is now possible to distribute these films digitally, virally, and more people will be able to access work which has no budget. You know, when you make a $10 million independent film, seems like a lot of money. I know it is a lot of money, but you need 10 million more for the prints and the advertising and the distribution costs. And of course, you can't raise that on most independent films because the subject matter tends to be important and therefore unappealing to the majority of people who want to see crap. Isn't that right? Isn't that what we all want to see? Now, of course, I say this to young people, but I'm stuck because I'm obviously no longer young, and I'm sort of caught in the belly of the beast. So my response to this is, of course, I was an officer at our union, and I believe in one world union. I believe we need a union of all the actors union, Actors Equity and AFTRA and SAG, including the directors and the writers and the IATSE, those are the stagehands. And we need to come together in America, and then we need to have affiliates in England and New Zealand and Australia and France and Germany and Italy, so that when a corporation comes, as they are coming, I spoke to a man in the airport, works for the National Football League, and they're doing it to him. They're trying to destroy the players' union. And when they try to destroy our union, we'll be able to shut the complete industry down. That's how us older folks do it. We tend to be on the violent side. I know there's so much optimism and enthusiasm and hopefulness in the young people that I've met this morning that but I do have to say from an older perspective, we made a hash of it. Really made a hash of it. We have left you a disaster. A lot of people use the idiom like it's one of those great tankers, you know, that are 4 football fields long. and it is steaming full steam ahead towards a cliff. And it takes a really long time to turn that thing. Those are the incremental changes. And unfortunately, the messes that we have created seem to be dictating that there won't be time to make those incremental changes. It will have to be a very dramatic solution. I was involved after the Free Southern Theater in protesting the war in Vietnam, trying to end that conflict. And I worked for the Black Panthers, an organization I very much believed in because they were community-based and they were trying to do something in spite of the occupation and oppression of the police forces all across this country towards people of color in what we called the ghettos. And our solution, the reason that we failed was that we polarized this country by believing that we were outside of the problem, that we were not on the train, that somehow because of our protest it absolved us of our connection and our responsibility to find an inclusive, nonviolent way to alter people's mindset. That sounds like incremental change, and maybe it will work. We will be able to change one mind at a time. I don't believe it will change any other way. You will always have to change one mind at a time. And it will always come from small individuals and groups. The solution is not at the governmental level. As a dear man that I'm very fond of, Manfred Max Neef, said, there is not a politician or a person in power who does not know what not to do. They have been doing it since the beginning. And they continue to do it in spite of the evidence that is in front of them that it does not work. This is why the boat is headed towards the cliff. I hope, it is my dearest hope, that this will not be what happens to us, that we will crash on the rocks and go down as a species or even as a planet. I don't believe as a planet, but the species, I'm not so sure about. I hope that we do have a transformation. I think we are in need of a paradigm shift. And a paradigm shift, a change of heart, is simply a choice. I saw a film in Savannah by a man named Tom Shadyac, who maybe you know of. He did Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and all the ones that Jim Carrey made himself a bundle, bought himself a 17,000 square foot house in Pasadena. And he was riding his bicycle on a fire trail and he fell off and he got a concussion. And the concussion didn't go away. It's called concussion syndrome or something. And your ears ring and your head aches. And he thought he was going to die. So it turned out then it healed itself, but he wanted to find out, so what is the meaning of this thing that I wanted to leave? And he went out all over the world to interview people like the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And he came up with, he made this film called I Am, which I highly recommend. And he came up with what seemed like fairly obvious observations. One, that the natural world is incredibly interconnected. That human beings are by nature cooperative. That markets do not define our value and our meaning. So, and that, principally, this is the most important one, which I really liked, and to which there is scientific evidence. The heart, and not the mind, is the organ which connects us to the natural world and to each other. And so with all my heart, I wish all of you the best of luck. Persevere, question authority, and seize the day. God bless.